Hello friends, Dale here from Three Generations. Thanks for joining. Today I want to talk about how I control my diabetic situation. And I appreciate you guys following us. So please follow, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thumbs up, all that stuff. I don't even know what it all is. But anyhow, so let me I'm using notes on this one so that I hopefully don't forget too many things. But let me start by saying my disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I have never been one. I have never played one on TV. I used to, when I worked maintenance, I used to carry a black bag around wearing sometimes white clothes with lots of paint on, because I also did painting. But I would carry that around the skilled care areas, the hallways, and nobody ever offered me doctor's wages. And my handwriting is really awful. So, nope, never been a doctor, never even played one, never been paid as one. Anyhow, so this is how I control diabetes on a diet only. Let me start by saying that we're almost exactly 2 years from the date when my HbA1c from my biannual blood test showed that I was, as a doctor nurse said on the phone when they called me, that I was an uncontrolled diabetic. And I put a little resistance up, although not with her. But 2 weeks later, I met with my doctor, who was a new doctor for me, my doctor that I'd had for, oh man, lots of years. 10, 15, yeah, probably at least 15 or more years. Had retired 5-6 months earlier. And so I had this guy as a fill-in occasionally, so it wasn't like we didn't know each other. But he was a new doctor for me as far as following real closely with my health situation. And so it was the end of February of 2021. We're now, no, that'd been 2020 already. Wow. We're now in 2022. So we're within a week or two of that 2-year anniversary. And they let me know by phone. And then it took 2 weeks to get me in, because that was just as COVID was coming on strong. And it was hard to get a doctor's appointment. Even though they wanted to see me right away, it took 2 weeks to get in. So in that 2 weeks, I ended up going to what I call YouTube University and started looking up how to control diabetes without drugs or insulin. I am not opposed to drugs, but I'm also not eager to take drugs. It seems like in our culture we are really quick to take drugs to fix things, and I'm not saying nobody should. I'm not saying I won't. But I wanted to see if there was a way to do it without that. And I soon found on YouTube a whole community of people who talked about not doing drugs, but doing it by a diet only. Well, I had showed up as a pre-diabetic for, I don't know, 3-4 years, maybe even longer than that. I don't remember. I could probably look it up in my file and see eventually. I could decipher it and figure out when I started being told that. And they would send literature with me, home with me after my appointments, after the HbA1cs, and from that literature, I knew that I was eating too much sugar, and that sugar was a problem as a pre-diabetic. And so what I ended up doing was I cut my soda drinking way down, way down. And I did not then go to like sugar-free stuff, whatever they call that, diet soda. I didn't do that. Mostly because I didn't think I liked the taste of it. I would, like if we would go out to eat, if Kendra and I would go somewhere, I might drink a Coke because I absolutely love Coke. But anyhow, So, and I cut back some other sugars too, but there was a lot of things I was very unaware of until I started watching the YouTube videos. And I had always thought diet sounded awful. Growing up, I grew up on a small farm in Ohio, and as my dad and mom had done, pretty much, or especially my dad, they grew all their own food. And so once we moved out to a farm when I was in 4th grade, we started growing almost all of our food too, whether that was vegetables or meat. And I was used to working very hard as a kid. Lifting those 100-pound sacks full of sweet corn that I'd carry that half a mile to a quarter of a mile up to the stand where we sold our vegetables. And it was ingrained in me as a kid, you have to eat like 2 plates full of food every evening if you're going to make it. And so I continued that practice for all those years. It was really hard not to eat 2 platefuls. And which I still, maybe I've cut it back to a plate and a quarter now in the evening, depending on what I'm eating. But that is the worst thing I could do as a diabetic, is fill up on the kinds of foods that I ate as a kid. Not all of them, but a lot of them that I thought was healthy. That we were eventually ingrained by the government and by nutrition experts, that there were things that we shouldn't be eating. So like for instance, and this will get me in trouble, I know, and it's fine if people push back on me on this, but I know, I'm not a doctor, but I know how my body does, and that is meat fat. I had taken on that advice of I forget, was that 80s? Somewhere around there, where they said all meat fat was bad for you and you would gain weight from meat fat. Well, I'm here to tell you a lot of my energy I get now is from meat fat. And I'll go into detail a little later about my health and what's happened with my health in these 2 years. But so my doctor, when I finally got in to see him 2 weeks after I started my diabetic diet, which I learned from doctors. It wasn't like these quacks out there who weren't in the medical field, but it was doctors who either themselves got diabetes, or like their spouse got it, or someone close, and they realized that the advice they had been given for all these years don't work. It doesn't work. It does not work to do what they thought would cure diabetes. So my doctor, after we chit-chat a little bit, he said, now I want to talk about drugs and insulin. And I right away said, no. I said, I'm going to do this with a diet. And he half rolled his eyes, and he said, okay, then you need to see a dietitian. I said, okay, I'll see one. Now, if this had been the doctor had for those 15 years, whatever, I think he would have trusted me and said, okay, let's see what happens, and then we'll decide about a dietitian. I think that could have been a response, but this guy didn't know me well enough, and I don't blame him. So I tried to schedule an appointment with a dietitian, and COVID now is at the place where they won't even, like with those kind of things, they won't even meet with you. They wouldn't, and they hadn't figured out how to do it online yet. They didn't have that stuff figured out. So it took me, I think it was close to 10 weeks to finally go and see the dietitian. And 1 week before that meeting online with her, I went ahead and had an HbA1c done again. My results from by that point, it was almost 4 months earlier, had been that I was an uncontrolled diabetic. And I meet with her, we chit-chat a while, and then she goes, why are we meeting? She said, you have your A1C under control, why would we meet? And I said, well, I'm doing this to honor my doctor who wanted me to do this. And she said, well, you're way below pre-diabetic levels. What did you do? So I told her about the diet, and she said, you're doing great. She said, I can't give you much advice beyond that. We talked a little bit about a few foods that I still wasn't quite sure about. But I had, in that process, I tested lots and lots of foods I would eat, and then 2 hours later I checked my blood sugar just to see, because what I found out was all of us, our bodies react a little differently. And the other thing I've learned since then is if we're sick, our blood sugars will go up, and if we're under stress, they can go up. There's different things that can make it go up. But anyhow, there's various things that can cause them to go up, even if you are eating a healthy diet. So my diet basically is I count carbs. I'd always feared and scared to death of a diet that counted calories. I'd always thought that'd be the most horrific thing to have to do. And when I thought of diet, that's what I thought. Oh my goodness, I'll never be able to do that. What my number was, I didn't want to go over 40 carbs a day. Now, if you know anything about carbs, that's not very many. You could eat a candy bar that would have 40 carbs in it. It doesn't take much to get to 40 carbs. But I did that for a year and almost a half till I retired. And then what happened at that point is that I ended up moving to the farm and started working hard, like 6 to 8 hours a day, where I was doing physically hard stuff. Not that I didn't work hard at work, my previous job, but it wasn't a physical labor for long hours. And so I had to up my carbs. I think it was up because I was my blood sugars were almost going too low, and I didn't have enough energy. So I had to up, and I think I went probably closer to 60 carbs a day, or maybe a little more than that. And all right, this is a continuation. I didn't realize I had talked way too long, and I ran past the 20-minute limit record on my camera. So I have to go back and try to make this make sense. So hopefully it will. Upping the amount of carbs per day was very helpful. But once the weather got colder and I wasn't working as long hours, and we have moved down here to the campground where it was harder for me to work, especially when it's cold and I don't have anywhere really to go to stay warm for an hour or something, get warmed back up. Once that happened, then my blood sugars, it was much harder to control again, because now I had gotten used to eating those 60 to 70 carbs a day instead of the 40 or less that I had done. And so I'm still struggling with that. I wish I could get that back down. So I'm running blood sugars a little higher than I prefer, but I do hit those good numbers, once or twice a week. And then I have some couple times a week where the numbers aren't too bad. And then I have another 3 days or so where they're not horrific numbers, like when I first started working with the diabetic situation and my diet, but they're higher than I prefer, and I know I can keep them lower. Now in this situation, I don't have a scales. Like when I worked at Fairmount, I'd go see Nurse Fern, and she would do my blood pressures. I could check my weight, and I would get those indicators beyond just the blood sugars. So like if my weight started going up again a little bit, I knew, oh, okay, what am I eating? How did I change my diet? And I'd go back and I'd think about it. Oh, I went home and had 3 handfuls of nuts instead of 1 as a snack. Oh, I need to cut back down to 1. And I'd have those things. Oh, my blood pressure is high. Okay, I need to cut back on something, or but I don't have that right now as a helpful tool also. But I need to get a doctor soon. I haven't found a doctor down here yet. I need to do that and get my HbA1c tested and some stuff, just to make sure that I'm still on target for where I want to be. But Anyhow, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Blessings to each one of you. Have a great day. Bye.